take a look at this. Americans are driving across the border for cheaper gas. And this one from the New York Times saying San Diego residents are moving to Tijuana to get more for their money. Let's welcome in business and market analyst and Newsmax contributor Seth Denson to break this all down. Seth, that's pretty wild. What do you make of those headlines?
Well, it's not shocking. Again, I always say money is mobile and it will go where it's going to get the most value. And certainly for Americans that are living near the Mexican border, whether it's filling up with gas or getting a lower cost of living, it makes perfect sense why they might expand their outreach to go do that. That being said, let's be very clear. Mexico is not the United States of America. And it is, as a proud American, I hate to see anybody try to flee the country to find a better life.
I'm originally from Southern California, so I still can't imagine anything being quite so bad that somebody would make a decision to move to Tijuana. But I want to talk about, what is Mexico doing right now that it's able to sort of offer these low prices when it comes to gasoline?
Yeah, well, part of that is, President Lopez Obrador, he's invested all of his political capital in energy prices. So Mexico has made significant investment in refining capabilities. As a matter of fact, they now have a controlling interest in one of the largest U.S.-based refineries out of Houston in Deer Park. So they're doing that. But Mexico also has the luxury, if you want to call it that, from their perspective, of they own and control their energy. So there's not independent privatization of the energy sector in Mexico. So from that perspective, that's where they're focusing their efforts. In addition, the president of Mexico has also continued to suspend the gas taxes down there and invested heavily in gas subsidies. So this is a loss leader for them. So while he's been very quick to come out and say, come on, Americans, come buy gas here, he's got to be careful. He's got to watch that. And his hope and his gamble is that when Americans come down there, they'll invest heavier in the economy. But that's a gamble, and we'll see if it pays off.
Well, Seth, I've not been a stranger to driving a further distance to pay a lower price at the pump, but I think it brings up the broader question of how are we seeing American consumer habits changing right now as a result of the inflation that we're seeing?
Well, Kilmeny, you may bring up a great point, and that's the reality of things. While we have been hearing for months that we're not going into recession and that inflation is transitory, Americans are realizing it with their wallets and their bank accounts that we absolutely are going into a recession and we are not seeing transitory inflation. So they're making adjustments, as they should do. Every American should start to look at where they are and make adjustments to their everyday life. You talk about driving a little bit further. What I would encourage Americans to do, though, is calculate all of the expenses in adjusting your expenses, right? So am I driving that much further that I'm burning that much more gas? When I'm going to the grocery store, look at the price per unit on the number of things that you're buying. Don't overbuy. These are all things that we need to focus on, but certainly Americans are starting to do that as they're recognizing their money's just not going as far as it once did.
And, it's interesting because we have heard Democrats try to redefine this economic period of time that we're in. Obviously, inflation and the economy are two big weak spots for Democrats heading into the midterms, which are about 100 days away. But would they be better off taking accountability, saying that we know that this is a problem, this is the situation that we're in, but putting together a plan to tackle this? Because I'm not seeing it.
I'm not seeing it either. And if I were the president, if I were advising the president, I would encourage him to do what they are doing, which is focusing on the job numbers and really investing heavily in that, as opposed to trying to deny that we're in a recession. Listen, the definition of recession is broken off of the definition of recede. Recede is to go or move back further away from a previous position, i.e. recession. And we've seen 6 months now of receding economic growth. That is a recession. Admit it, understand it, outline a plan to do it, focus on how you're going to maintain the jobs. Unfortunately, all they're doing is pointing to jobs. They're not talking about how they're going to expand it. That's what they need to do if they want to make sure they're reassuring the American people of their economic policy. Changing the definition doesn't do that, because Americans are realists and they're looking at the reality of things and saying, we're in a recession and inflation is here.
Seth, I want to quickly, before we go, the Manchin-Schumer deal that they say will lower the nation's deficit by $300 billion. I mean, Manchin was against spending anything that might be inflammatory already to the economy, particularly off of the back of those CPI numbers. What is your take on that? He insists that there's nothing in that reconciliation bill that is inflammatory.
Yeah, I don't see how you as a government could go out and try to spend $500 billion in the situation that we're in right now, recognizing they're going to try to do it off this minimum corporate tax. You do that when the economy's sailing. You don't do that when the economy is struggling. Margins are not squeezed, they're moved. They're going to be moved to the consumer, they're going to be moved to the employee. Unfortunately, when you increase the taxes, if you want to do that, you do that when the economy's really good, not when it's struggling.
All right, Seth Denson, great to have you with us. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Kimberly.